and you have forgotten the exhortation which speaks to you as sons. You know, there's another way we can read this, one that leaves quite a bit of an impression, if you will, and that is if it were to say, and you no longer believe the exhortation which speaks to you as sons. So when you forget God, this is talking about totally forsaking, this is walking away. Understand, this is a faith problem. You have a faith problem. When you are walking away from God, you have a belief issue. If I believe that Yeshua is coming back to get the righteous and to judge the wicked, if I believe that he's going to eternally destroy the sinner and that the sinner is going to be seen as his enemy and it's going to be a horrific destruction, if I believe that, it provokes me to behave a certain way. It provokes me into righteousness. It provokes me to obey him. It provokes me to call upon the name of Yeshua. It provokes me to confess sin. This is what it does if I believe. But if I stop believing in his word, you know where I'm going? I'm going to the world. I'm going to take on the water, if you will, of the world. Their value system, their likes, their dislikes, that's what will happen to me. And so he says, you've forgotten the exhortation, or you no longer believe, which speaks to you as sons. My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor be discouraged when you are rebuked by him. And so he sends out this warning in regard to the chastening of the Lord. Now, again, why would he need to send out a warning? Because it's going to be the most radical life-altering change or experience you've ever had. Again, you will know pain. You will know suffering. This is not going to be some unmemorable event. This is something that's going to leave a scar that you will not soon forget, because this is what happens when God gets into your world. The key thing is how are you going to respond when the Lord begins to chasten you and he flips your world upside down? Do you give in to discouragement? Do you give in to the hatred and the resentment that the enemy wants you to buy into, that's saying, oh, this is the Lord's fault. This is all the Lord. And this is what's going to come. He's going to try to get you to turn against the Lord. You know, the concept of discipline and suffering, this is not a concept the world has been able to accept. You have atheists and humanists and secularists and agnostics and across the board who will tell you flat out, if God inflicts pain and makes people suffer, he's not a God that I want to serve. That's an hateful, evil God. This is their actual view of it. When in fact, the whole purpose of the pain and the suffering and him inflicting this chastisement is so that we can be instructed by it, so that we can learn from it, so that we can be saved. Because God is not willing that any should perish. I want to open up today by taking you to 2 Maccabees. And this should be fresh in your mind. You know the Maccabean story by now, or at least bits and pieces of it, where the backdrop is this Antichrist figure, Antiochus Epiphanes, rises to power. Arrogance and evil grew strong in authority, and it started to cover the land. And he laid waste to the Jewish people, forced conversions, mass death. In fact, the deaths that are recorded and what they did to the Jewish people is some of the most atrocious things you've ever heard in your life. And it's one of the most horrifying moments in the history of Israel. This is the backdrop. There's something he wants you to walk away with, and it is mind-blowing. And this is what we read, 2 Maccabees chapter 6, verse 12. Now I urge those who read this book not to be depressed by such calamities. Now keep in mind, this is the guy that's going into detail about what they did to these people. I mean, it's horrific, right? And he's saying, well, don't be depressed by that. And I mean, that's a tough pill to swallow. But he says this, but to recognize that these punishments were designed not to destroy, but to discipline our people. So again, this is a concept the world cannot understand without faith in the Lord, without biblical conviction of righteousness. This is not something they can get their hands wrapped around. And yet the writer, knowing these events would have happened, testifying to these events, he says, you need to understand this was about discipline, not about destroying us. Even though many were destroyed, the discipline has a purpose. And that purpose is, as we go on to verse 16, therefore he never withdraws his mercy from us. Ultimately, that is the purpose of the discipline. It's salvation. And this is such a beautiful truth. This is a beautiful promise. He never takes his mercy away. But again, guess what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to believe it. You have to have that faith. Even in the midst of the most unimaginable hell being unleashed, where you need to be at, where I need to be at, is never forgetting God's mercy is forever. He goes on and says, although he disciplines us with calamities, he does not forsake his own people. And then he says, let what we have said serve as a reminder. Now, does this at all sound familiar? Doesn't this sound like exactly what the writer of Hebrews said? Because that's exactly what he was trying to get his point across. Listen to this. You're forgetting the exhortation that speaks to you as sons. Don't be discouraged. Don't despise the Lord. And then he goes on, the next verse is, because whom the Lord loves, he chastens. That very message is being said here, and we need to take it with us. And one of the most horrifying times in history, we need to consider, we need to remember everything that he has just conveyed about discipline. Proverbs 20, verse 30, blows that hurt cleanse away evil, as do stripes the inner depths of the heart. It doesn't say, you know what, blows that tickle, yeah, that'll cleanse away evil, or gentle blows, that will help. You'll definitely, turn from your wicked ways. No, blows that are excruciatingly painful, that are terrifying, that go to your very heart in consideration. That's when it begins to purge out the filth. That's when the idols that you set over the Lord, when your priorities are all screwed up, that's when your priorities start to come back in order and you start to tear down those idols and understand what is really important and start to value the things that God values and not what the world values. Amen? It's only when we're hurled into affliction and curses of God falling upon us and us feeling that great pain and suffering that we get clarity. We have that moment of clarity where we can just step back and go, oh, I forgot how frail and fragile I really am and how I can't survive this world apart from Yeshua.
Hey there, this is Mike at Corner Fringe Ministries. Thanks for watching our video. If you liked the video or it encouraged you, do us a favor. Hit the like button. Don't forget to hit the share. And if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button. Now, if you want to watch the rest of this video, hit the button here. And if you want to watch the rest of this series, you can check it out here. And don't forget, you can download the Corner Fringe Ministries app today on any of your Play stores. Thanks for joining us at Corner Fringe Ministries.